Welcome to Keeping Shit Real. I am your host, Jessie Towns, and today I am joined by the lovely Terrie. Terrie has become my new Instagram best friend. It's so wild that we've never actually met in person, but I am going to come up north, I promise you, one day, and to come and see you and Charlie as well. That is on my list of things to do for 2026. I feel like I've been really slack. I've been saying it for a year, and I must do it. Terrie, introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and a little bit about just yourself. And yeah, tell me.
Well, I'm Terrie. I'm a SEN parent, fellow SEN parent, with a PDA being that I birthed. And through my journey advocating for Miles and gaining knowledge, I am now on the path of being an independent advocate, but through a community interest company, Inspire Inclusion for SEND. It's a non-profit organisation, so I am not out here to have any financial gain from what I am doing. Everything is about the community, giving back to the community, supporting families, supporting children, and empowering parents. The main aspect of what I do is to empower parents, to give them the tools that they need to advocate. And I'm also on the sidelines of that. I am qualified in understanding autism level 3, so I offer support in terms of how parents can support their autistic children, autistic children's rights, which are completely separate to the EHCP process and the legal duties that are placed on schools. Autistic individuals have specific rights, and there are specific legislations to cover autistic individuals as a whole. So I can come at things from many avenues with kind of what I know to get parents and children the outcomes that they need so that the children can thrive, essentially.
So your name, Terrie, on Instagram is the autistic _MUA, which stands for, if you don't know this, Terrie is a highly regarded makeup artist, but has currently retired from making people look amazing.
Had to retire. We've had to make life changes.
And I know you were thinking, weren't you, about changing your name for a while on Instagram, but you've kept with it, but have now set up your business one, which is for those of you that, if you follow Terrie, obviously on Instagram, she is the autistic makeup artist, and then Inspire for Inclusion, which is Inspire and then the number 4, isn't it? Inclusion at the end. So if you need, I'm not going to throw Terrie under the bus here. If you need any help, I know that your waiting list at the moment, is it for Inspire for Inclusion? So let's just clarify this. So Terrie's taking no makeup bookings. Let me just clarify this. Do not want Terrie's inbox now being filled. Her DM
That's become more of a blog profile now, I think.
A blog profile. But I mean, that's obviously your therapy, isn't it? You're channeling out is your makeup. But Inspire for Inclusion also is, like you just said then, is your non-for-profit organisation that helps parents. So just a little bit about you, Terrie. So how did you get to starting with the autistic makeup artist? What was, talk to me about, for those of you that don't know, Terrie has got a son called Miles, and you tell us about Miles and where your journey started, even blogging, posting about, because for those of you that don't know, Terrie and I have both got PDA children. So tell us about Miles and how the journey started, Terrie, for you guys.
Well, the journey started when Miles was in nursery. I had never even come across the word autism until his nursery teacher said to me that she wanted to refer him to speech and language for using ukulele.
And let me just interject, which is wild considering now, and I was the same, and probably many parents that are listening to this are the same. The word gets bandied around, doesn't it? Like autism, ADHD, neurodivergent. But I think there's a massive part that something's not on your radar until it needs to be on your radar. Do you know what I mean? That was the same for us. Like my mum, she's children's nurse. Like she looked after children with really high learning needs and physical and mental disabilities. But I was still really slow off the mark, I think.
My dad's a SEN teacher, mate. He's been a SEN teacher since I've been 10 years old, and never, I've never heard the word. I had never heard.
It's so wild, isn't it? That you don't think of it
my whole life
until you need it.
Yeah, he's the director of education now, or he's got some sort of fancy title. But yeah, he'd never explained it to me. It was not, we wasn't educated as children on neurodiversity, like nothing. We just knew that our dad worked in a school with children that were challenging. That's all we.
Yeah,
that's
challenges. I mean, I'm 45. I'm a bit older than you, but for me, my only sort of not experience. There was a naughty boys' school not that far from my secondary school. And then the irony is they weren't fucking naughty. No. In the 90s and early noughties, these children were, profiling, diagnosis, observation of children that obviously were clearly neurodivergent was not a big thing. And, kids just got excluded left, right and centre. And unfortunately, as we know, boys, are... boys in terms of, there is a bit of a gender bias, I think, when it comes to specifically PDA, that it is more boys, because the reality is boys are much more externalized than anything, aren't they? And I've never heard of a naughty girls' school, because it generally tends to be that it's always boys that get disruptive, but actually the disruptive behaviour isn't them actually being naughty. The disruptive behaviour is actually that there's something else underlying. Now, it's funny that, I watched, if anybody's listening to this, and if you've not seen this, Terrie, I watched the film Steve on Saturday night, and it literally...
I saw your post about it, though.
Yeah, so it's on Netflix, and it's got Cillian Murphy in it, who we obviously love, is Thomas Shelby from Peaky Blinders, but it is a book, a highly regarded book by a guy called Max Porter, and it's about a young lad in it and who's called Shy, and he ends up a sort of prototype of a school for children, for boys that have behavioural issues. They might have had like some, soft findings with the law, or, their parents can't cope with them and they're like sent off to this school. But this book, so they've adapted the book. So the book Shy is about the boy called Shy. But the film that they've turned it into a film called Steve, because Steve was a character in the book that wasn't actually in it that much. But Steve is the headmaster of this specialist school, and he is just... Nice. It is so amazing how one teacher or a set of teachers can actually fully change the trajectory of a child's entire life by meeting their need, understanding them, and having support functions in place that do support them, especially when family members may have turned themselves. So if you're listening to this, please watch Steve. I mean, there were parts of it that I laughed out loud, but there were also parts of it that I cried. I think it hit an emotional chord with me, like with everything with Maxie. And I just thought teachers are so undervalued and so underappreciated. And the book is...
They're under pressure too, aren't they?
They're underpaid, they're undervalued, they're under so much pressure. And the book and the film, Steve, it's on Netflix. I can just say, just watch it. Anybody that's listening to this, watch it. Because it's so mind-blowing. So back to Miles then. Sorry, just as I do always, just gone off on a tangent. So Miles then. So when, like you said, you had never really heard of anything like that. And it was, even with your dad working, like being a headmaster. See, that's Miles. Same as my mum as well, I was a bit like, oh yeah, that's just what she does.
It's just what he does, yeah.
Why would I question it?
Yeah, exactly. But... And then from there, as soon as I started Googling, all kind of the little dots kind of went together, and I was like, oh my God, he's autistic. And how have I not seen that he's autistic?
Yeah, totally.
And through Miles's journey, then you look at yourself, and I was like,
oh my God, how many parents who then child gets diagnosed with autism or ADHD, that is when a lot of people then...
He was always like me as a child. I was like, he's just like me. He's like me.
Yeah.
This is me.
And I think for us, obviously, Max is obviously a twin, and they're both diagnosed with, Jake's not fully diagnosed yet of ADHD, but we've always laughed that Jake is completely like, my dad's like, he's so much like you. And I'm like, yeah, because Dad, I clearly have ADHD. And all those, and there's a girl when I was growing up, and it makes me laugh. I found a school report a couple of years ago I think it was from when I was in year 11, and it's all like, Jessica can't concentrate. Jessica studies focusing. Jessica talks a lot. Jessica's been sent outside because she can't. And I'm always like, it's just like, well, clearly.
It doesn't make sense.
But, it's, the ADHD, can ADHD, is it fully genetic or not? That's not a conversation for today. But in terms of like the autism diagnosis, there are, it can skip generations, and there are members of both my husband and I's family that is very, very clear are autistic.
Same.
But it's and if my dad is listening to this, I'm going to throw my dad straight under the bus. And hi, Dad. My dad, he will not have this, and I've brought this up with him a couple of times, but my dad, throughout my entire childhood, was always obsessed with collecting things. And these obsessions went from China penguins to pictures of greyhounds. And I look back on my childhood and I'm like, these obsessive traits, I'm like,
yeah.
I wonder where this non-genetic autistic medical condition, because that is what people are like, it can be brought on by vaccines. I'm like, no, if you trace back, it is always somebody in your family. I don't get me wrong, I think some things can make autism maybe appear more prevalent than not. I think childhood ages can make a massive difference in it also, but also they're obviously better at dealing with it. But with Miles then, when in terms of PDA, when was that, like the autism thing, that was highlighted in nursery, and then the PDA side of the profile, when did that come along?
When he started reception.
Yeah.
So when he started reception, that's when we started to get significant meltdowns at home. Things I'd never seen from Miles before.
Like a light switch. Behaviour just changed instantly. Yeah.
Like the emotional dysregulation, crying but being unable to communicate with me what had happened. It was all cryptic words. And then, I found everything because I was new to it all. I was looking into every single accommodation in terms of the autism lens, and I was applying these adjustments like Now Next and Then boards. I bought so many visuals and put them up.
Regulation.
That's what's supposed to regulate an autistic child, and it was
something wasn't right.
When he was like these, I put all these visuals up that they say that you're supposed to do for it, and I remember I spent hundreds on them, because the first batch I thought is because they've got faces on. He isn't accessing them because they've got faces on. So how was he?
So when you thought, right, I'm going to go down following the autistic recommendations of Now and Next, reward charts, zones of regulation, all that jazz, which, to be honest, mainstream schools, right, when they start reception, that's where it starts, because this story sounds exactly like us. And I always say to parents, and everything that I've read research-wise, there's something, they're obviously autistic, but there's something that it's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. There's something just not right. It fits, but it doesn't fit.
Yeah. And that's when I thought, why is nothing working? Like, to me, and for my brain as an autistic person, because I'm not PDA, so these things that I was doing for Miles, I was like, these are really helping me. As he's won the Now, Next, and Then what we're doing today. I always need a plan. But Miles was just avoiding every single avenue that I was putting into play. Completely avoiding. So say if Now, Next, and Then we're going for a walk, and we always went for a walk at the same time every single day. All of a sudden that walk was an absolute fucking nightmare. Leaving the house, the transition, coming back, I've got countless videos of him in the middle of a field, sat down, refusing to, he can't move because and that could be down to the Now, Next, and Then saying we're going for a walk now.
Totally.
So everything was so up in the air. And then I watched one of Casey's videos at Peace Parents. It was actually on TikTok. I came across one of her videos, and I'll never forget it, because I watched it and I was like, I've got goosebumps now thinking about it. I was like, oh my God.
That's Miles.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And I started hyperfixating on her account, because it was the only account I'd come across at the time that was about PDA.
Yeah.
I started hyperfixating on her, and then I went onto the PDA Society website and started applying adjustments from the PDA lens, and things the responses from him, I was like,
changed.
The PDA, it was a complete U-turn on everything else had been applied to support him as an autistic child, and things were just working. You know, they were effective.
Totally.
And I was like, oh my God, he's a PDA child. And even now, if I try and apply, it's so hard to balance autism, PDA, or ADHD. I'm obviously not dealing with ADHD as far as I am aware. But trying to juggle what is dominant at that point, I was still applying autistic interventions and PDA ones.
Yeah.
Now, PDA is the dominant need, and that's the need that we meet. You know, we can't meet the autistic needs without meeting the nervous system needs. So
yeah, and that's something that we have found for us. PDA was kind of dropped into a conversation at nursery, and then it kind of just got forgotten about because dysregulation was like through the roof. But then the start in mainstream again was like that tipping point. That was when it just all went considerably downhill because, you know, the demand in primary school just so ramps up. Even in reception, it's, you know, the sitting together, sitting down, everybody clapping their hands, sit in that spot, you know, open. And it wasn't until the Senko at their mainstream school said, look, this is PDA and this, and she gave us a few leaflets, and then we went on the PDA Society, and the first thing that we picked up was the Panda approach. And I was like, you know, and the key to any child with PDA, like it's not, they've just changed it, haven't they? The PDA Society, it's not pick your battles. Well, it is, but they've just slightly changed it, I think, with the help of Libby Hill, you know, the SALT. Is it Libby Hill? Yeah, it is Libby Hill. They've changed pick your battles to prioritise and compromise, which ultimately I interpret as that is picking your battles. As soon as we started picking our battles and managing anxiety, we noticed a massive shift. But it's, and at the moment, if you don't mind talking about it, like obviously Miles is the same age as the twins. He is in year 3. Obviously, as we know in the UK, the curriculum kind of takes a massive spike in terms of expectation in a mainstream school from year 3. They're not in infants anymore. It's all like sticking bits of shit onto sugar paper, bits of pasta, making, you know, there is a little bit of classwork. But now Miles obviously started year 3 in September. We are now, where are we? At the start of December. Tell us about what has significantly changed for you guys in the last couple of months.
Well, we would have ended up here someday, and I've always known. I expected year 5, year 6 to be crunch time for Miles. You know, the preparation SATs. I thought his nervous system is not going to cope with all of that. That was kind of my timeline on him being in mainstream school. But the significant issue that we've had this year is his support has not been the same in year 2. So his school haven't done what they should have done, basically. I can't go into too much detail because it's
obviously being the queen of EHCPs and LAs, you obviously know what he should have and what he shouldn't have, put it this way.
Yeah, and he didn't have it, whereas the back end of year 2 he did, and things were absolutely incredible. He was thriving at full-time after school clubs. We've gone back into year 3, and, you know, I think nobody kind of taken into consideration that it's a new avenue of going in school. It's a new door. It's a new classroom.
Normally year 3 is they're not in the infant bit anymore. For us, like Jake, you know, obviously everybody knows Max is at a specialist school now, but even for Jake, like they're at a different part of the school. So for Miles, for a child that has got a PDA profile, like that familiarity and needing to know what the expectation is going to be, and that's a massive
toilet. He may as well be in a new school, you know.
Totally might as well be in a new school.
He's navigating the building completely different to what he always has done. He goes in the hall. Everything's different in terms of his executive functioning.
And then you've ultimately got like 4 years as well altogether, haven't you? You've got 3, 4, 5 and 6, whereas infants is always kept kind of separate away from, like, we call it the big kids part of the school.
It's like now lunchtime, he's having lunchtime with year fives and year six. After school clubs involve year fives and year six. He's not
And
down.
they're bigger, they're louder, they are more
Stronger,
brazen. Yeah,
more
they're
dominant.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
just an absolute. So I'm unsure. I knew we would have ended up here, and I'm glad that we're here now. I am glad
Oh,
that
totally.
now, 100 million% now. I'm seeing how Miles is now that the pressure of school is gone. But yeah, he started year 3. He was really excited. The first day he come home and he had his first meltdown in 8 months, because Miles doesn't melt down often. He tends to go the other way and shuts down.
Yep.
He's not external, as you know, I've explained to you before. He can be external at home, but he's internalized everywhere else, even with his dad.
And for you as a parent, seeing that is, yeah, I always say to parents, like, you know your child better than anybody else, and when you know that something is not right for them, seeing Miles as an internalizer who keeps everything in and keeps that mask on, being so external in his behavior, what did you just think straight away? Did you know that school, the transition into year 3, was ultimately what the trigger point was?
Yeah, and the lack of support, like
And the lack
straight
of
away.
support.
That first meltdown on that first day, it took me right back to reception. It took me right back. It was the same kind of meltdown. It was self-injurious, self-directed. I hate myself. This is all my fault. Hitting himself. You know, it's always very self-directed.
Yeah.
Internal. Yeah, he never, for about 4 years, I mean, he used to come for me, and he used to, you know, I used to be part of his kind of, not his punch bag, but I used to be his outlet in terms of his frustration.
I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. The problem with being the sacred person that's a part of their safe space, who is their safe person, sorry, it ultimately is you get the brunt end of the stick. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter that, you know, you're happily married, you've got a husband, like Miles has got a dad, same as us. But unfortunately, the default person always ends up being mum. And I know that's where parents really struggle with the fact that they end up, and it is sacred that there is one person. And I'm thankful that I am that person for Max, but that comes with
fucking heavy.
It's fucking heavy. It's the word. It is heavy, and it's hard, and it's tiring. But for you, that was that. And then, so what's changed since then? You know, we are in December now. So how has life suddenly changed for you and for Miles?
Well, he's not been in school now. He's not been able to attend school for almost 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
I was kind of holding out until he had his private educational psychologist assessment. Once that was done, I was like, we're following your lead, mate. If you want to be done, we are done. I've always followed his lead, because the thing is, Jessie, since he was in reception and we've gone for his EHCP, I have always known deep in my gut that mainstream isn't right for him. But because he was at the point then, and I was hyper aware that he was pathological demand avoidant, he wanted to attend the school, and he's always been on a reduced timetable, but he's always wanted to go in the morning. We have never had him
refusal.
No, never. We've had dysregulation getting dressed.
Oh yeah, like what goes on the 2 hours before is totally fucking irrelevant. But we get him in there, he's okay.
But once he's there with his friends, he's fine. He's happy. He's having fun with his friends, and it's like I've said to, you know, his school recently. Miles was always literally the first one at that gate to go in. Now he doesn't even want to get dressed. He doesn't want to even hear the word school. The word school alone is triggering for him right now. So
and I think as many parents that I speak to, I think it's a testament to children that have got PDA, because they're always in fight, flight, freeze, or fall, and they're, you know, and I say this to parents all the time, you know, they say, oh, how can I build resilience in my kids? And I was like, you don't need to build resilience in your kid. Like, a child with PDA is probably one of the most resilient sort of beings on earth, because they spend their nervous system is constantly on edge. So they immediately know that they don't see through bullshit, and they know their own capacity a lot of the time. But
word resilience triggers me as a PDA parent, because
I think as a PDA parent, it is the parent. I always say this to everybody: you don't need to really build resilience in kids that have got PDA. The resilience it has to be built in the parents, because one day something will work well, the next day it won't. You can't rhyme or reason. You can't say, oh, he's going to be all right today, and then it might be a really high tolerance day, but then all it takes is for one thing to go wrong, and then that demand and tolerance window is completely changed. And it is a testament to children that got PDA that they do know their own capacity a lot of the time. They are quite, but, if parents, they're not being supported by school, if they, there's a lot of reasons why parents struggle. We've got to fucking work, we've got mortgages to pay, we've got rent to pay, you've got food shopping, you got all the shit that PDA kids want you to buy for their dopamine hits fucking left, right and centre.
I'm getting a dinosaur after this for a prize. That's what was placed on me to do this podcast.
Yeah, and it's one of those that it's one of those that you really do have to make as a judgment call, and people's personal circumstances. I mean, for us, we hardly worked for 2 years. I mean, we've taken unpaid parental leave and all this, and taking vast amount of times off and like balancing it, because and that's a massive strain at home, like on relationships, as well as just all the other stuff of then trying to keep a kid regulated. So for Miles, what are your next steps for Miles then?
We're going for EOTAS now.
EOTAS, which stands for those of you that don't know, education other than at school. So how, in terms of, I mean, they've picked the battle with the right person. So
they sure have.
Yeah. So, I mean, EOTAS is we never went down the EOTAS route, and I've worked with a really good company called Sensational Tutors. And they do EOTAS packages, and they actually have tutors for children that have got PDA, and a lot of them are special ed teachers that have left mainstream because they're underpaid, undervalued, and it's a fucking nightmare.
And now they're earning a fucking killing.
Yeah, and now and they're being valued, and they are actually seeing proper support structures in place that allow children to be able to thrive, because unfortunately they are taken away from the mainstream education. Because not everybody's story is as good story as ours. And you're like, Max is in a specialist school. Is it the right place for him for secondary? Probably not, because it's an SEMH and it's not going to they can't meet need from secondary, because the secondary SEMH school is just not right fit. Because when Maxie is at school, as long as his high functioning autism that need is met, Maxie is a very, complicit student. If he's highly engaged and the day is set right, whereas secondary school, that's not right. So securing EOTAS then. So obviously Miles has got an EHCP. Yeah. Securing EOTAS then. Talk to me about how do parents secure EOTAS? You have to have an EHCP. This is not my level of expertise. This is why I'm asking. Yes, my son has got an EHCP, but it seems like such a long time ago that we had all this, even though he's just had his annual review. Once you've got an EHCP, that legal binding contract that's issued from your local authority, which is an accumulation of occupational therapists, educational psychologists, parents' lived experience, SENCO observations, the local authority can then issue it out. But when it comes, a lot of the time EHCPs are issued, aren't they? If a child is, let's spin this on its head, if a child is non-verbal and is diagnosed very, very early on, like in toddler years, an EHCP is generally issued, isn't it, straight up for nursery? Like they get that support.
Yeah. The more extreme needs, like
more extremes,
education, with him being external, straight away it's needs an EHCP. There's no way around it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then if your child's starting school and then it's not until the signs and traits show in school, obviously it can be triggered from school, or you can apply for it yourself, can't you? But the school obviously have a heavy weight in, like not in observations, in evidence.
The evidence gathering,
yeah. So for the EOTAS then, how do you secure EOTAS for those that are thinking about going down the EOTAS route?
Well, I mean, many, first of all, are under the conception that, your child has got to have tried
everything.
Other educational settings. That is absolutely categorically not the case.
Right. I did not know that. So for those of you listening,
never been a SEN setting. He has never attended any other setting but his mainstream school. It is always about the needs, Jessie. It is not about what a child has been through. Well, it is about what a child has been through and the evidence there, but it's not about whether they have been in a SEN setting and whether a SEN setting, like I know what's going to happen to us. They're going to send his EHCP to SEN settings. We'll probably have SEN settings say we can meet need. But my argument is Miles cannot, through his needs at the moment, he can't even access the community. So how on earth do you expect him to access any educational setting right now? And the evidence for me, the important aspect of my application for an EOTAS is I started a diary for Miles when he was in nursery. So I have a 3-year-long diary that significantly details and evidences his educational journey, every trigger, every day off, every time I've had a meeting, every intervention.
So for parents going forward, and I say this, get a diary of everything, because there will be days
honestly. That's why we got our EHCP first time round. I submitted a 365 page diary for our EHCP application. They can't deny it. It's evidence-based. It's there.
And it's funny you say that. When I formally complained to RLA after, they just kept on saying, oh, Max, you can go to a mainstream school with an ASD. And I was like, that's just, but we just don't think that's good enough. We feel like he needs to be in a complete specialist setting. The first thing the LA said when we formally complained, the first thing they actually said was, have you spoken to your school about this? And I was thinking, like, is this a generic? I know, talk about raging, but I actually had to take a day off work because then they ask you to evidence like what, in terms of chronological order, what has happened. And then I was
and they know most parents don't do that because nobody's told to do that.
Nobody's told them. So top tip if you're listening to this, journal, diary, because it doesn't matter how good that you are at remembering. On these days we're human, like we will forget stuff, and then when stuff is really, it's fucking chaos when they're at home all the time, and it is really difficult. There will be some days where you are just surviving, and that is all evidence, isn't it, that they can use to. So you kept the diary, so then you are going back to the local authority then to basically request for EOTAS, and then the banding. How much? What is it money wise? Like, do they agree a set amount of? Do they agree? This is an advert for Sensational Tutors, by the way. But say if you went with Sensational Tutors, do they agree on a set amount per week? Is it hours or is it money? Like how is it hours?
But because it's an EOTAS package, I have to put all of that together. So I will say the educational psychologist, when we get that report back, say she says 10 hours of online tutoring as part of his bespoke package.
Per week,
I would then have to present to the local authority the cost.
Which is minimal amount considering how many hours schools are cumulatively at school. If you think about it, let's say it's 35 hours a week, isn't it, really? Kids are at school. So he's having less than a third of that, which is then topped up. But then you can go to forest schools and stuff, can't you? And they can pay for that.
My plan, and one thing about the evidence for an EOTAS, a really important part, just to kind of add that onto my last bit, is recording your child's voice. A child or an individual's voice holds more legal weight than the school, the local authority,
I did not know that,
medical professionals, and ours as a parent. I have got so many recordings, and I've done it throughout this journey, of Miles's voice, and I play them at every single annual review because his voice is the most important.
And when you say about his voice, you're not just listening to Miles talk. Specifically, what does that recording generally, what is the subject of that recording?
Well, it's like at the moment, for instance, like he had a phone call with a safeguard lead at school yesterday who was this TA, so it fits quite well. He had a Zoom call, a wellbeing check, and before that I asked him how he felt about the call, and I clicked record. So he then himself is telling me how this call is making him feel.
Right, okay. So it's that lived experience of him, of the child themselves.
His voice, because the care that, and this is through legislation, again, the Equality Act, the Educational Act, the SEN regulations, it's about the individual's voice. They are the only ones that know, if they can verbalise it, what they need, what support they need.
Amazing.
So if you can get that recorded and present that to the local authority, your voice doesn't even matter anymore, neither does
down to the child. It trumps everything.
Yeah, like Miles has explicitly said on multiple recordings, he doesn't want to attend school because he's not outside enough. So that meets the forest school box because he will be outside more.
Yeah, brilliant.
He stated about how dogs make him feel so calm. So there's the
therapy dog. There's that. Yeah. There's play
so
therapy.
It's all about, you know, his voice is telling them what he needs. And
then once you've got that, so then you as the parent, you are then responsible for basically making the package dependent on what your child's needs are, and then you just take that all back to the local authority and say, look, this and this, we want this, he can't attend school. But what if parents are having, you know, and I hear this time and time again, what if parents, there's a lot of schools out there that don't believe in PDA, or they've got highly internalized kids in their class. If a parent wants to just remove from mainstream and do EOTAS, where do they legally stand in that ground? Can you just, if they have got a reasonable adjustment and the school isn't meeting need, can they just do it?
Well, yeah,
because I've always been told, and I always tell parents to never deregister unless you're absolutely, because we were told by our Senko, obviously we live down south, we live in Surrey, that because we were like, oh, we'll just deregister until we get, because it was getting so stressful. And our Senko said, don't deregister from Surrey, because they will then say, you took them out of school, it's your issue, you need to fix it, there's no support available.
You've got no ammunition if you off-roll them from school. So it'd be so much easier for me now to just remove school altogether.
But find an alternate.
But through him still being on roll at school, I'm continuing to gain evidence.
Totally. That's what we were told.
Legal weight behind me also through him being on a roll at school. So because they've got a duty to, because at the minute, Miles...
The UK has a duty to educate your child under section 19, isn't it? I know that. Because this is what we had. Yeah, this is what we had. And when, you know, Maxi, they sort of started floating the idea of this, like, this pupil referral unit, I was like, fucking hell, he's going to fucking naughty kids school, which obviously was not a naughty kids school. We spoke about this. It's not a naughty kids school. It's, you know, but that was my understanding of a when I was at school. It's like where all the naughty kids went, but they obviously weren't naughty. They were like undiagnosed neurodivergent kids off, and now a lot of them are. So pupil referrals are kids who can't attend mainstream that have been excluded permanently or are still waiting for an EHCP to be issued. And I was like, but what if we refuse the pupil referral unit? And our Senko very clearly said to us off the record, like, that is it. Surrey Council will be like, that's it, we're done. We've given, this is our process and our options. And if you don't take the pupil referral unit, you're going to be on your own effectively. And we were like, oh my God. But actually it was, and I've said this time and time again, it was the best thing to ever happen to Max. He went to the pupil, and it all happened really quickly. He started, I think we had 3 weeks left to the end of the winter term, and they were like, oh, we can go in January. And I was like, what? And that was it. Off he went. And he was like a model student after 2 weeks, because there was only 6 kids in a class. There was 2 teachers per class. It was quite geared up for a range of different, like, neurodivergency. Neurodivergency, is that the right word? Different, you know. But what it then gave us was quality evidence, because he had an EHCP, he had to go back to mainstream, because the whole point was it was like strategies and this, that and the other, and school came to visit, they learn, and vice versa. But when it then catastrophically fucking blew up when he went back. But it was brilliant, because we had evidence then from the head mistress at the PRU that it just wasn't going to work. And she actually told us it's not going to work with him going back to mainstream. She said he definitely has got a PDA profile. And at that point, he still didn't have that on his diagnosis. But yeah, it's evidence building, isn't it? Everything is evidence. And
if you're off roll, you're then responsible. Like the game I'm playing at the moment is, I say game, but it's like a game of chess. I will forever say that this system is like a game of chess.
You go one way, move one way, and then it changes again.
Yeah, it's such a narcissistic system. It's actually insane. But if I was to off-roll Miles, which would be easier for me, it would be easier for
totally
Miles.
less stress, but then you're going to get no support.
Yeah, but then I'm responsible, and I've got nothing to kind of. At the minute, I've put in a Section 19 request for alternative provision because you've got to tick all these boxes. So I've done my Section 19 request. I'll be filing a formal complaint with the school. I'll be filing a formal complaint with the local authority under Section 42 because they are responsible for his education and his provision. And currently, he's not getting an education and his provision isn't in place.
And also,
so
it doesn't.
All of that,
And it also doesn't matter. I mean, they're legally responsible for educating our kids, but also the other issue is like, if you were to off-roll, you are then financially accountable for everything. And that's completely unfair. I don't care, local authorities piss money up the wall in the most ridiculous of ways, but the one thing that should always be set aside for is the education of kids, because every child is legally entitled to an education, no matter what, whether they're dyslexic, they're autistic, they've got PDA, they've got ADHD. But again, making sure that a lot of places, unfortunately, will try and fob parents off. I have parents tell me that the school have suggested home educating, and I'm like, it's not
the easier avenue for them.
It's the easier avenue. It gets a child out of school. It's one less person, but also it's not a teacher in a mainstream school's responsibility or legally allowed to say you should be home educating, because they don't know what home education looks like. They teach in a mainstream school.
Yeah.
And it's wild. So before we wrap up, Terrie, look, if you're just starting this whole EHCP process, like, what would be your top piece of advice? Obviously, you've just said it, keeping a diary, a journal of everything.
Yeah. That's kind of my main, no matter what evidence you've got, no matter what professionals are involved, no matter what a school are saying, if you have got a diary that explicitly details, where have you gone, Jessie?
I'm here somewhere. Hold on.
Oh, there you go. If you have got a diary that significantly evidences each day or most days your child's responses before school, after school, recordings of their own voice.
Yep.
That is the most concrete bit of evidence that you can have, because
it's black and white. It's
evidence-based, yeah. And like I say, I used to feel awful recording Miles at times of.
See, I've never ever heard of her. I mean, I've never heard of. I mean, it seems like a really, really obvious thing.
Yeah.
But I just didn't think it would
you feel bad for it.
I felt
and I can in those moments.
Totally, I can totally understand our parents feel uncomfortable doing that, because it's like not exposure, but
privacy.
Yeah, totally.
He's not giving me consent to do it, but in order to get what I need for him, he's not going to sit in a room with these professionals.
Yeah.
He's not going to sit with a speech.
He's not going to feel comfortable telling them.
No, and even if he was external, he still wouldn't articulate it in a way. They would take, like at the minute, Miles will say, I don't want to go to school, because he's 7 years old. So he feels like he doesn't want to. He's not going to word it as in, I can't go to school. But those two words, can't and won't, are significantly different in this system. And if the minute a child or a parent says they won't come to school or they won't get dressed, they take it as it's a choice. Whereas if you say they can't get dressed, they can't come to school, that's about the need. And all these little wordings in this game of chess, they latch onto and they run with it, whether the child has said it or whether the parent has said it. So if he was to sit in a room with these people, they would absolutely run the wind with some of the things that he would say as a 7-year-old and say it's his choice. He's choosing not to attend.
Yeah.
But doing it as a recording when he is able to openly express himself. And as you know, Miles advocates like an absolute fucking warrior. The way he advocates things is better than anyone that's been in a profession for SEN children for 10 years, because it's his own experience that he's talking about.
Experience.
Yeah. It's like with maths, like he's always loved maths, and I've got a recording of him where he is saying, because he's complete since back end of year 2, he's hated maths, doesn't want anything to do with maths at school, so many issues with it. And the other night he was sat on Vesper's bed, because he loves sitting on the dog's bed, and we was doing like a calculator game, and usually Miles, I would say, what's 5 times 5? Bump. Wouldn't even need to think about it, knows the answer. No executive functioning, just knows it. And he sat there and his eyes started welling up, and he said, Mummy, I just feel like school have stole all of my maths knowledge. Now that is absolutely significant in me advocating for his cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
And the fact that mainstream
but the fact you've got it on like a recording.
Yeah.
It seems really obvious now. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, but I think it feels quite exploiting, if that makes sense.
And you've kind of got to get past that, because you need, if they're able to verbalise things, you need their voice. It is the most vital bit of evidence that you can have. And local authorities they're
pretty useless, let's be honest.
They do the parent views and the pupil views, but I can guarantee 9 out of 10 parents, especially PDA parents, fill out them pupil views themselves, because their child ain't going to answer.
I did 100%.
Child ain't going to answer 8 questions about what they want.
But now I'm thinking about it, actually, obviously Max has just had his annual review, and he is first one at his specialist school, like literally just before the summer holidays, and they actually spoke to him. Obviously, once they're in a specialist school, and the majority of them, it's a completely different kettle of fish. Do you know what I mean? Like, they are really, and Max, they spoke, he has play therapy and all this, and they actually spoke to him, and they extended Max's play therapy. Was only for a term, but they've extended it to 24 weeks of play therapy on top of being at a specialist school. And I was like, oh. And they said, we've spoken to Max and we've asked him, and he really loves it and he's doing really well, so we're just going to give it to him for 24 weeks. I was thinking, oh my God, I bet Surrey Council are going to pull their fucking hair out. All this money, because the banding of funding is really high at specialist schools. So I think I bet Surrey Council are thinking, for fuck's sake, these kids that advocate for themselves are just costing us millions, quite rightfully.
Yeah. And that's because their voice holds, like I say.
Totally. God, that's so interesting. Yeah,
so much legal weight than parent. Their voice is the most significant and the one that holds the most force, because you're not going to get a local authority coming to me and saying, well, he said that about maths, but what if he means this? No, mate, his voice says what he said.
That's so weird, because obviously it went to it obviously went back to our case officer. It's a different case officer when we were going for it, and it was done really quickly. And because I was kind of expecting a bit of backlash, but I was expecting a bit of pushback from them, should I say, of them being like, well, no, but they've done it. So wow.
His voice has said that's what he needs, and they have to.
Oh, wow, you've
got the Children and Families Act, haven't you? Which is what is the main the SEN regs and the Children Families Act are the main avenues of legislation that you learn through IPSIA, and it's about the EHCP process. But there is so much more legislation out there that supports the individual's voice. Yeah. So it's
amazing.
They know that they cannot argue with a child's own voice. Like all my emails, Jessie, I quote what Miles has actually said, and
this is going to be so helpful for parents, because I think a lot of them don't think that it comes down, it's their view. And even like DLA applications, everything, it's really hard to reword stuff that's from your child's point of view. But I
can't sit with Miles and say, what do you like about school? What do you not like about school? I can't do that. I've got to do that over like a week's basis, and the questions can't be questions. And
declarative statements swung into
Miles,
it.
Can I ask you some questions? Absolutely fucking not. Mum. I'm going here and I'm going to look at some planets. I'll see you later.
It's wild. Oh, Terrie, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And if you've got if you want to, I'm just going to keep on saying this. If you've got any questions for Terrie, follow her on Inspire for Inclusion. Don't tap her up for makeup, because that is off the radar at the moment. But Inspire for Inclusion. It is actually linked, isn't it, on your autistic makeup artist, Instagram also. So yeah, you can message Terrie there. The waiting list for inquiries for Inspire Inclusion, do I ask? Is it open? Is it closed for inquiries?
I am taking inquiries, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then take them on a basis.
Yeah, depending how complex they are and as to whether I've got capacity. But what I'm trying to do at the minute is kind of have a day of the week around all of this with Miles, where I'm doing like phone calls, inquiries, because
that's difficult doing phone calls with a PDA kid in the house.
Well, I'll do this. I'll be in my car.
Doing it in the car. I mean, my PDA in the PDA circle, I think for the entire of the summer holidays, every single live session that I did was in my car in McDonald's car park because it was, the kids go to bed slightly later at night, and it's just, I couldn't have, that's the other thing, could not be talking about PDA with Max in the room around, because it finishes him off. So thank you to everybody for listening. If you like what you hear, don't forget to download, subscribe, rate and review the pod. It helps me with my rankings. I think this is something I'm really proud of. 62 in the rankings on Apple. I mean 62. But check me out. But yeah, if you like what you hear, please subscribe, download, rate and review. And I'll speak to you next week. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.